Okay, this is folks. Sometimes you should listen to the pre-interview. It's pretty funny and it's really great. But this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host, and as usual, we always have some good guests on. And as usual, I don't know how to speak English. I only know how to speak Kentuckian. But our guest today is John Hodgson, and he's a candidate for State Rep District 36, which is basically Eastern Jefferson County. Jerry Miller, a friend of this show, is stepping down. He's retiring. But I'm going to tell you, this brother right here, man, I'm glad we're blessed to have him in a position to step in Jerry Miller's shoes. There's some big shoes, but I know this brother can step into them. Brother, we were talking a little bit before the show started, and you said what's on your heart, that there's a need for a revival in this country, a moral revival, political revival, spiritual revival.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
I guess you could say that's probably why I'm running. I think I've known a lot of good and decent people, good and decent Americans all my life that spend their time going to work, taking care of their family, raising their kids, coaching the softball team, mowing the grass on Saturday and doing what they've got to do. And they trusted the so-called experts to run our government. They stayed out of politics. They might have watched a little bit of TV and read the newspaper, but for the most part, they did not get involved. And I think we see where that has gotten us now. And I think we as a nation, we're in need of revival, reviving those fundamental moral concepts that founded America. We need spiritual revival. People are starting to drift away from church. Even before COVID, church attendance was dwindling. And now, church has been reduced to something you do on TV for, 45 minutes on Sunday morning. And I think we're in need of political revival. We need ordinary people all over the place to be involved in politics, to be working with candidates, to be helping shape public policy, and to get involved in the political process and not just leave it to them. Don't leave it to the experts. Because trust me, there are a group of so-called experts at every level of government, in the city, in the state, in the nation, and in the United Nations, that would happily rule over us. And as long as we do everything they tell us to, they think everything would be fine. But sometimes I don't want to do everything they tell us to. For instance, I didn't appreciate it when the governor, closed down our churches last year and violated the First Amendment. And I'm pretty vocal about that. And I think the assembling of the body together is very important. I don't like having our speech limited. I don't like oligarchs, billionaires telling us what we can and can't say. One of the fundamental tenets of liberty is being able to express your opinion, even if someone disagrees with it, as long as you're not acting in a violent manner. And if we cease to be able to speak words that somebody else disagrees with, we're no longer living in a free society. And that's what always preceded totalitarianism in other countries like Russia and communist China and Cuba and North Korea. It was the inability to speak freely about your thoughts, your opinions, the inability to live out your faith ideals. And if we suppress that in America, we're not going to have a free republic anymore.
Right. Brother, let me follow up 2 points that you made, very important points. Freedom of speech.
Yes.
And I was one time read this speech by Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist. And he said that when you violate freedom of speech, you're actually doing two wrongs. One, freedom to say, and also freedom to hear.
Right.
And brother, I think you know it as well as I do. There are speech codes all throughout colleges and universities in this country. Yes. I'm not understanding that, brother. What's happening here?
Well, it's a loss of freedom. I can remember I was in college 100 years ago, back in the 80s, but we had a small area on campus that was called the free speech area. Even then, there was always somebody jumping up on a table and talking about something. We thought it was kind of funny. We'd go watch on a break from class, but it's to where now you can't speak your mind on a campus. You may be giving up your academic life. I've got a friend that actually was even excluded for graduation because of some of his opinions on free speech at a private college in Kentucky. And like I say, that the clamp down on the ability to speak your mind always precedes totalitarianism. And my grandparents had the opportunity to be in Nazi Germany in 1936 when Hitler had just come to power and was having the Olympics. My grandfather was a coach, and they spoke a little German, and they spoke to the common people about what was going on. And they asked the taxi driver, said, "What do you think about Hitler?" And the guy, startled, and he, just shook his head like that, and he just, put a slash mark across his throat and said, "We can't talk about that."
Wow.
So even in 1936, the German people were afraid, and that's when the rest of the world was marveling at how Germany had pulled themselves out of an economic depression. And of course, we know what happened later. 3 years later, he plunged the world into war, and 70 million people died.
Yes.
And
so, brother, do you think it's a violation of free speech? Let's say, for example, I'm some movie actor, or whatever, and I say something like, "Men can't have babies." The next thing you know, I'm no longer part of that series.
Right. Well, and yeah, absolutely. Regardless of how intelligent or ignorant somebody's opinion is, they've got a right to speak it. And the public has a right to backlash and say, "Well, that's stupid. I'm not going to go watch your movies anymore."
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a collusion between big government, big media, big corporations that says, "We're going to cancel you. We're going to ruin you. We're going to not publish your book. We're going to void your contract. We're going to kick you out of the boardroom. We're going to make you not a member of the board of directors anymore." With the all-powerful government looking on and approving, we have violated free speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think we as individuals have freedom of association, and if you don't like what I have to say, or I don't like what you have to say, we might not go to each other's house for Christmas dinner. But that's not the place of the government to tell people what they can say and not say.
Right. And brother, well, and then that touches upon another subject here. You were talking about how Governor Beshear, don't let me put words in your mouth, but
Okay.
Governor Beshear basically said, "Hey, because of COVID, we can't have church services." That's
Right.
what you're opposed to?
Yes, sir. What the governor said was that he, as the governor, decided he was going to determine what was essential and what was non-essential. And it was very telling to me that church was deemed non-essential. It's a nice to have in the governor's mind, but liquor stores were essential,
Mm-hmm.
and abortion clinics were essential.
Yes.
And some other things that people may be opposed to personally were deemed essential. But it's not his decision to decide what's essential and what's not, especially in light of the U.S. Constitution that says that people have the freedom of religion, and he could not legally stop people from attending church, which some friends of mine sued him and went to a federal judge and got that overturned. And churches were allowed to have services after that. And also in the Kentucky Constitution, it says that nowhere in the Commonwealth does absolute power exist in any one person. And that's what Governor Beshear actually argued in court. His lawyers argued that his power was unlimited in the pandemic, that he could overrule the legislature, he could overrule the law.
Oh my Lord.
Yes. And
He actually went in court and said it.
Yes.
Oh my
It's a matter in the court. And, we were in uncharted waters with the pandemic, and I believe that he was genuinely afraid of the virus and doing what he thought was best to protect people. But in America, we've got the freedom to not protect ourselves if we want to. If I choose to, ride a motorcycle without a helmet and I get my head knocked in, that's on me. If I choose to, eat fast food every day and I get 100 pounds overweight and die of a heart attack, that's on me.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need a nanny state telling us what we have to do to keep ourselves safe. And obviously the only thing that's truly safe is just for everybody to just sit at home on the couch and wait. But even that's not safe, because you get diabetes and die sitting on the couch all day. So
right.
People have to be active. So I just I think it's improper for any government official at any level to suggest that they wield absolute power. That's a violation of the very separation of powers in our country.
Brother, we just got a few minutes left, but again,
Yes,
you're a candidate for state representative, District 36, that's Eastern Jefferson County. What are like one or two critical issues you see facing Eastern Jefferson County?
Well, there's always issues that people worry about, traffic and roads, and that's certainly something. We've got a lot of construction going on out here, and I think that's important. But what's important changes depending on what's going on in society. Public safety was a big concern when we had unrest in the streets, and it appeared that the laws were not being enforced. There were people that were threatened, people had guns put to their head, people that were killed, and people want to know where their public protection is, where are the police. And I think those have to do mostly with local government and the complete failure in leadership of Mayor Beshear. But I think public safety is important to people. I think economic development is important, and continued economic growth. We can't be shuttering businesses. A lot of our economic devastation we have right now is actually caused by the government, small business people being shut down, being not allowed to practice. Yeah. And now the crisis we have is talking to a small business person today that can't get any help because it pays more to sit at home than it does to go to work. Right. So people in small businesses that employ a handful of people can't get helpers. They can't get carpenter's assistants. You can't find a plumber. You can't find anybody to bale hay. Right. Just all kinds of things that you can't get done because there aren't any people available in that lower paid kind of assistant entry level category. Right. And people used to compete for customers, and now they're competing for workers just to keep their doors open.
Yeah. Brother, you brought up public safety. Here's the one thing that concerned me when Black Lives Matter was, just had all sorts of folks out in the street, and they were busting out windows, engaging in acts of vandalism. You can't stop stupid. The only thing you can do is sort of respond to it. But here's what bothered me was when so-called responsible leaders in the civil rights community refused to unequivocally condemn the violence.
Right.
I had a hard time wrapping my head around that. On one hand, you're going to these businesses and saying, well, we need money for these programs. If you don't give us money, you're racist. If you don't give us money, you're not concerned about Black folk. But then when when nut jobs are running around the street vandalizing companies, you don't take an unequivocal stand. Hey, violence is wrong. Vandalism is wrong. If you commit it, you get caught, you need to go to jail. Right. I'm not understanding that contradiction. I don't know if you have a comment on that or not.
Well, I don't really understand it either. I'll say first, I'm all about the First Amendment right for people to express themselves and to protest. I've done it myself many times, but that was confined to going to rallies and waving a sign. I wouldn't trespass. I wouldn't commit violence on anybody. I wouldn't commit vandalism on their property, or certainly wouldn't endanger their lives. But when you cross that line, you've gone from expressing your First Amendment right to committing a crime. And if our local government and police aren't capable of stopping violent crime, what are they there for? I mean, that's probably the first need of society is, to be secure in your person and in your effects. I mean, I'd like to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that, my house is not going to be burglarized or somebody's not going to try to break in and kill me. I mean, I think those are important things to every human being.
Right. Absolutely. Brother, we're going to conclude it here, but before we do, I want you to plug your book. It is just not that complicated. Tell us a little something about that.
I'll show you that here if I get that on camera.
Yep,
just not that complicated. So that's a book I wrote over the course of several years. Put it together in 2020, and it's a collection of 30 stories from my life. It's completely not about politics. It's about the life that I've lived in, Texas and Kentucky, and exploring the woods and working with farm animals, and the funny situations that we get ourselves into, and the lessons that the Creator of the universe teaches us about life in those situations. And a lot of them are funny. Some of them are kind of poignant, but they're about a 5-minute read each. And I think people really enjoy reading about a simpler time. It's about the 60s and 70s and 80s, as I was growing up. And I've had a lot of crazy adventures over the years, a lot of involving personal injury and farm animals. So
how can people get a copy?
It's available on Amazon, and it's also available at lulu.com. You can get either a print version or a Kindle edition.
Lulu, how do you spell that? LULU.com?
Yes, sir. LULU.com.
All right. Fantastic.
And,
brother, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're local and you got a group of people looking to get a book, I'm always glad to come talk and sell a few books and sign them. So.
Okay. You're available for local speaking engagements.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Brother, we're going to conclude here, but before we do, I just wanted to thank you for stepping up. I wanted to thank you. That's not easy. It's not easy to pursue a public office. It's not easy to be in public office. A lot of times people don't understand how dangerous, flat out dangerous it can be. And yet, you've got a wonderful wife and children, and yet you're willing to risk your life like that. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate what you do on your show, speaking the truth and being a civil voice in an uncivil society. And I think when we stop talking to each other, bad things happen. So I really appreciate what you do every day too, and your work with this show and the chess club, and you're improving people's lives.
Brother, I will be in touch. All the best to you, but I will be in touch, brother.